Welcome, my beloved souls. They said it couldn't be done. They swore you would fail. But now here you are, undeniable, unstoppable, and completely transformed by the very storms they thought would destroy you. And oh, how the tables have turned. There's a certain poetic irony in watching the same people who once doubted you now struggle to process the magnitude of your success. Their silence says more than words ever could. The disbelief in their eyes, the subtle shift in their tone, the way their excuses pile up like broken shields. They don't know how to handle what you've become. Before we dive deep into this message, I want to pause for a moment and say thank you to every soul who has supported this channel through Super Thanks. Whether you gave a little or gave a lot, please know that your gift means everything. It allows this message to reach further, go deeper, and continue impacting lives around the world. But hear me clearly. Even if you've never donated, I'm just as grateful for your presence. Your support through watching, liking, commenting, and simply showing up. It's all fuel for this divine assignment, and I thank you with my whole heart. Now, let me ask you something real. Have you ever risen from a place they left you for dead? Have you ever shocked the very people who counted you out? If this message hits home, if you know you're one of the chosen ones who broke every limit and shattered every prediction, then type 777 in the comments right now. Let the world know you didn't just make it, you ascended. Chosen one, research shows that people often experience more emotional pain seeing someone they underestimated succeed than they do from their own failures. And you, chosen one, have become that living, breathing ache. You didn't just succeed, you became undeniable. You turned their projections into poetry. You became the one they can't mention without confronting their own mediocrity. And that's not your fault. You weren't supposed to rise. Not like this. Not with your background. Not with your past. Not with the obstacles you faced. But still, you rose. You thrived. You turned impossible into done. And now, they're not just annoyed, they're mad. The kind of mad that lingers in silence. The kind that makes them sit in the driveway a little longer before facing the reality that they never tried. The kind of mad that watches your highlight reel with a clenched jaw, whispering, "How did they do it?" They try not to bring up your name anymore, not because they don't see you, but because they can't unsee you. You've become their silent nightmare, a reflection of everything they could have done, could have been, but didn't pursue. You didn't build your life to spite them. You built it because you refused to let pain be your prison. And now you shine in ways they never imagined, doing things they told you were impossible. They can ignore you, but they can't erase you. They can throw shade, but they can't stop your shine. You were never meant to just survive. You were born to dominate, to lead, to break barriers they never even dared to approach. And that's why your very presence makes them squirm. Because every step you take forward shatters another excuse they told themselves for staying small. But here's what they'll never understand. This wasn't about proving them wrong. It was always about proving yourself right. So let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them feel what they feel. It doesn't change your calling. While they sit in the shadows of what could have been, you, chosen one, are out here making history. And trust me, it only gets better from here. God's chosen ones, you've done the impossible. They're so mad, they want to cry. Number 1, they never expected you to escape the mental cage. They never thought you, the chosen one, would awaken. How could someone like you, who was underestimated, overlooked, and constantly second-guessed, possibly escape the prison they built around your mind. You were supposed to stay small. You were supposed to stay silent. They planted thoughts in your spirit, seeds of limitation disguised as care, control wrapped in concern. Be realistic, they said. Stay in your lane. But why were the boundaries always tighter for you, God's chosen one? Have you ever wondered why their advice always seemed more like invisible chains than real guidance? You were conditioned to believe that your potential had borders, and those borders were not to be crossed. What if that belief was never yours to carry? Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And that's exactly what happened. You renewed your mind, and in doing so, you broke every rule they tried to write on your soul. For a while, their words echoed so loudly that you questioned your own instincts. You doubted your ideas. You buried your dreams. You hesitated at the edge of opportunity, thinking, maybe they're right. But one day, maybe slowly, maybe in a divine flash, you woke up. You saw through the illusion. What they called realistic was just fear with a different name. You realized that staying still would kill more than just your progress. It would silence your calling. That moment was your exodus. Just like Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers, you were cast into a mental dungeon by those who feared your destiny. But Genesis 50:20 reminds us, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Your breakthrough wasn't just for you. It exposed every lie they tried to bury you under. They expected you to need their approval, but you stopped asking. They assumed you'd seek validation, but you stopped needing it. They thought you'd live and die in the limitations they drew around you, but you rose anyway. Look at people like Tyler Perry. Homeless and sleeping in his car, he was told over and over again that he wasn't the right fit for Hollywood. Yet today, he owns one of the largest film studios in the world. Or consider Viola Davis, who grew up in poverty and battled through rejection, yet became an Oscar, Emmy, and Tony winner. These people didn't just break barriers, they made the world reimagine what's possible. Just like you, their success wasn't luck. It was divine alignment and relentless faith. Now your very existence at this level is a confrontation to those who tried to keep you small. Psalm 18:29 says, "With your help I can advance against a troop. With my God I can scale a wall." And you did. You scaled the walls they swore were too high. You shattered the ceilings they pretended didn't exist. And now, without saying a word, your life is speaking volumes. Your success doesn't just inspire, it exposes. Do you see why they're uncomfortable now? Why they whisper about you when you leave the room? It's not your wins that offend them. It's the mirror those wins hold up to their faces. Because if someone like you could rise above the fear, the doubt, the background, the struggle, then what's stopping them? The truth is, they never held you back. They only held themselves back, and your victory proves it. Isaiah 61 declares, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." That's why you shine so brightly now. It's not arrogance, it's not rebellion, it's divine radiance. And that radiance doesn't ask for permission, it just illuminates. Like the story of Jim Carrey, who once wrote himself a $10 million check for acting services rendered while broke and living in his car. Years later, he cashed that check for his role in Dumb and Dumber. That's the power of a vision that refuses to die. So now you walk differently. You think higher. You live freer. You didn't just break the mental cage. They now live in the shadow of the freedom you claimed. And because of that, they're not just mad. They're shaken. Philippians 4:13 reminds you, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me," and you did the impossible, not to prove them wrong, but to prove that God's favor cannot be boxed in by human doubt. The world is watching, chosen one. And now they know it wasn't luck, it wasn't accident, it was God's anointing on your life. And that anointing, it cannot be denied. Number 2, you didn't just win, you changed the rules of the game. Chosen one, did you ever stop to realize that your victory isn't what's making them uncomfortable? It's how you achieved it. They weren't afraid of your success as long as it looked like theirs. But when you broke every expectation and took a divine path they couldn't trace, that's when the fear settled in. They thought you would stay locked in the same cycle, trying and failing like they did, obeying the same unspoken laws they never dared to question. So, how did you break out? What gave you the courage to abandon their version of reality? Isaiah 43:19 declares, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" And indeed, what God birthed in you wasn't meant to follow the world's tired pattern. While others clung to their traditions, you leaned into revelation. While they begged for open doors, you built your own. They were still waiting for permission. You were already walking in purpose. How did you know the old system was never meant to carry your calling? They expected you to climb step by step, quietly, humbly, without challenging their fragile balance. But instead of waiting for a seat at their table, you carved your own space out of stone, fire, and faith. That's when they panicked, not because you won, but because your win wasn't dependent on their approval. Ecclesiastes 7:12 reminds us, wisdom preserves those who have it. And it was wisdom, not tradition, that fueled your rise. Think of Ava DuVernay. Hollywood didn't hand her anything, no formal training, no golden connections, just grit and vision. Now she directs history-shaping films and runs her own studio. Her power came not from playing the game, but from changing it. Can you see the parallel to your own journey? They're not just shocked by your outcome. They're disturbed by what your outcome reveals about the choices they never made. Are they truly angry with you? Or is your very existence challenging every excuse they've ever believed? When you walk into the room, do they see you? Or do they see the version of themselves they were too afraid to become? Matthew 9:17 says, "Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. They pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved." You are that new vessel, chosen one. The old rules could never contain your calling, so you stepped outside the system and became the system. You don't just disrupt spaces, you redefine them. Issa Rae started with homemade videos on YouTube, no budget, no industry access. She didn't ask for a gatekeeper's blessing. She brought the blessing with her. Now she's one of the most influential forces in entertainment. Like you, her very existence proved that the path they swore didn't exist was always possible with faith and boldness. Are you starting to see the pattern? Those who change the game never look like they belong in it at first. They look out of place, strange, too ambitious. But isn't that exactly how David looked before facing Goliath? Just a boy with a sling, confronting a system built on fear. Yet 1 Samuel 17:45 reminds us, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." And like David, your unconventional method was never weakness, it was your divine edge. They thought you'd need their platform, but you built your own. They thought you'd ask to join their circle, but you drew your own. Your boldness didn't just make you win, it broke their illusion. Now they scramble to adapt to a game you created, one they can't even understand. Why? Because they never prepared for a reality where you didn't need them to rise. Look at Pharrell Williams. For years, his sound was labeled too weird by industry insiders, but he stayed authentic. And eventually, the world caught up. Now he's a pioneer, not because he blended in, but because he didn't. That's what you've done. And the truth is, they don't know how to compete anymore because your game has no blueprint, only God's voice. 2 Corinthians 3:17 says, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom." That's the game you're playing now, freedom. A game where success isn't measured by status but by surrender, where advancement isn't by approval but by anointing. And in that game, they are lost. Not because you excluded them, but because they never believed it was possible. Proverbs 4:18 proclaims, "The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. And your light, chosen one, is no longer ignorable." Your journey wasn't about breaking their rules. It was about stepping into your own divine rhythm. Number 3, your existence proves they lied to themselves. Chosen one, did you ever stop to think about why your success feels like a threat to them, not just to their ego, but to their entire belief system? It's because your very existence, your very rise, demolishes the comforting lie they've told themselves for years, that it was never possible for them. Have you realized how powerful you've become simply by showing up and refusing to quit? They needed that lie. It shielded them from facing the truth. It justified their fear. They told themselves that the system was too broken, that people like them don't make it, that success was reserved for the lucky or the connected. But what happens to that narrative when someone with the same background, the same pain, the same odds, you, breaks through anyway? Romans 1:20 says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." In other words, when something or someone proves that greatness is possible, no excuse can stand. And you, chosen one, are that proof. Your story isn't just a testimony, it's a confrontation. You didn't come from privilege. You didn't have perfect timing. You didn't get a shortcut. You had doubts. You faced rejection. But you still chose to rise. And because you did, every excuse they built like armor began to crack. Their story, the one that said, "I can't because," lost its power the moment you walked into your purpose. And now, whether they admit it or not, they feel exposed. Take the story of Tiffany Haddish. She grew up in foster care, homeless at times, laughed at and ignored by the industry, but she kept going. When her breakthrough came, people weren't just surprised, they were shaken, because she didn't look like success. She didn't follow the script. She was raw, real, and relentless, just like you. She didn't just succeed, she disrupted narratives that kept others trapped. And now, every time you shine, you force them to see what they didn't do. That's why they shrink back. Not because they hate you, but because loving your journey would mean mourning their own hesitation. James 4:17 reminds us, "If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin." They knew they had more inside, but they let the fear speak louder than faith. You didn't. So what are they left with? If they can't deny your rise, they have to reinterpret it. That's when they whisper, "It's just luck," or "they had help." Have you noticed how they minimize your fight? How they ignore the nights you cried, the days you nearly quit, the battles you fought in silence? Because to fully acknowledge your process would mean admitting they had the same opportunity and didn't take it. Look at Tyler Mitchell, the first black photographer to shoot a Vogue cover at just 23 years old. He didn't wait for permission. He created his own lane. His breakthrough shattered decades of, "This is how things are done." It wasn't luck, it was vision and courage, like yours. So when people say you got lucky, ask yourself, is that their truth or their defense mechanism? Galatians 6:4 says, "Each one should test their own actions." Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. But comparison is exactly what haunts them now. They can't celebrate you without comparing themselves to what they could have been. And it hurts. Even Les Brown, one of the most famous motivational speakers in the world, was labeled educable mentally retarded as a child. He was abandoned, overlooked, counted out, but he refused to accept the limits placed on him. Today, millions know his voice. His existence, like yours, proves that destiny doesn't ask for credentials. It only asks for faith. 2 Timothy 1:7 declares, "For God gave us a spirit, not of fear, but of power and love and self-control." You walked in that power, you moved in that boldness, and in doing so, you took away every excuse they had left. That's why they're uncomfortable. Not because you did the impossible, but because you revealed it was never impossible to begin with. So here's the question they're silently asking themselves, but terrified to answer. What if it was me? What if I had tried? What if I had pushed through just one more time? That's not envy, that's regret in disguise. And regret is far more dangerous than jealousy because it lingers. It rewrites memories. It whispers what if in the quiet of the night. Chosen one, your rise didn't just elevate you, it exposed the limits others settled for. And you didn't do it out of spite. You did it because the call on your life was louder than their comfort zone. You answered. And now, the light of your obedience is shining into places they'd rather keep in the dark. John 3:21 tells us, "But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God." Your life is in the light now, and not everyone can stand it. But don't dim it. Don't apologize for it, because you didn't just prove them wrong. You proved that God was right for choosing you all along. Number 4, they wanted to inspire you, not be surpassed by you. Chosen one, have you ever noticed that some of the people who once cheered the loudest for your growth now grow silent in your presence? Why is it that those who once claimed to believe in your potential now struggle to celebrate your progress? It's not because you've done anything wrong, it's because you've done something unexpected. You outgrew them, and that reality is harder for them to swallow than anyone else's success ever could be. In the beginning, they wore the mask of the wise guide, the one with answers, experience, and perspective. They loved being needed, being praised for their wisdom, their connections, their encouragement. And to their credit, some of their intentions were pure at first. But did they ever truly believe you would rise above them? Or were they only comfortable being your ceiling, not your launching pad? Proverbs 27:21 says, "The crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, but people are tested by their praise." It's easy to support someone when they're behind you. It's easy to give advice when you're not threatened by their potential. But your growth didn't stop at their comfort zone. You absorbed their encouragement and exceeded their example. You took the torch and ran farther than they ever dared. Can you remember when their tone began to change, when their compliments felt more like backhanded remarks? It wasn't your confidence that offended them, it was your evolution. And isn't it strange? They were fine being your mentor until you no longer needed a mentor. They wanted to shape your journey, not be left behind by it. John 3:30 says, "He must become greater, I must become less." But not everyone is ready to decrease when your light starts to increase. Look at the life of Simone Biles. Early in her gymnastics career, many older athletes and coaches praised her talent. But as she soared to unprecedented heights, setting new records, redefining excellence, some began to criticize her routines as too difficult, too flashy. Why? Because she was rewriting what greatness looked like, and not everyone was ready for that change. Your success didn't betray anyone. It just revealed the hidden expectations they never admitted. They wanted to help you, but within limits. They wanted to be admired for guiding you, not confronted with the truth that they may have capped you. And now every time you succeed, it forces them to confront their own stagnation. You evolved. They didn't. That's the truth they won't say out loud. Philippians 2:3 reminds us, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." But when people only value you while you're behind them, they're not mentoring, they're managing. And you, chosen one, were never meant to be managed. You were meant to break boundaries, even the invisible ones built by those who claim to love you. Take Greta Thunberg, for example. As a teenager, she was praised for her passion about climate change. But when her voice grew louder, when world leaders had to sit across from her in silence, some who once applauded her began to roll their eyes. Why? Because she didn't stay in her place. She rose beyond the role of inspired youth and became a global force. Now, they say you've changed, but is it really that you changed, or that you stopped needing their approval? The very people who once said, "Go farther," now whisper, "Slow down." But you're not slowing down. You've been called for more, and their reaction isn't your burden to carry. Isaiah 54:2-3 encourages us, "Enlarge the place of your tent. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords, strengthen your stakes, for you will spread out to the right and to the left." You've outgrown the space they imagined for you because God designed you for expansion. And no earthly mentor can limit a divine mission. Even Brian Chesky, the co-founder of Airbnb, once sought advice from tech veterans who doubted his vision. Many told him it wouldn't work. People wouldn't rent homes to strangers. But he pressed forward. Today, those same advisors have watched him become one of the most innovative CEOs in the world. And some, they never expected to be surpassed by the young man they once guided. So now, when they grow distant, when their encouragement fades, when their presence becomes conditional, don't internalize it. It's not your fault. You didn't fail them. You just refused to stop growing. And growth always makes insecure people uncomfortable. Psalm 115:14 promises, "May the Lord cause you to flourish, both you and your children." That's not a suggestion, it's a promise. And no mentor, no matter how seasoned, can override a promise from God. Number 5. They invested in your failure, not your success. Chosen one, have you ever felt the weight of hidden eyes, those watching not to cheer, but to witness your downfall? Some people clapped for you, but it was hollow. Their support was shallow because it was never about lifting you, it was about controlling the narrative. What happens when someone invests emotionally in your failure and then watches you soar? They never openly rooted against you, of course. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they smiled, they nodded, they offered you help laced with condescension. They stayed close, not to build you up, but to be close enough when you crumbled. It gave them comfort. It validated their belief that you were never going to make it. But then you didn't fail. You rose, you figured it out. And now their quiet hope in your collapse has turned into a loud, invisible grief. Genesis 50:20 reminds us, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." You were surrounded by people who expected your ruin to be their reassurance, but God flipped the story. What they hoped would be your breaking point became your breakthrough. Isn't it wild how your success drained the life from their illusions? They felt superior while you struggled. As long as you were losing, they could feel okay with mediocrity. But when you rose, despite everything, they lost their script. They lost their safety. They lost the lie they lived by. So now they avoid your wins. They look away when your name is mentioned. They shift the subject when you walk into the room. 1 John 4:4 declares, "The one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world." That's why you didn't break when they expected you to. That's why your fall never came, because you weren't moving with your own strength. You were being carried by divine grace. Think of Tabitha Brown, now a celebrated actress and social media personality. Before her viral success, she was dismissed, underestimated, and even mocked. Some laughed at her cheerful optimism and vegan journey. But now, she's a brand powerhouse. And you better believe, some who once smiled in her face are now choking on the reality that she didn't fail. You see, they didn't just want you to lose. They needed it, because your fall would have made their stagnation feel justified, but instead you became undeniable, and in that moment, their quiet investment in your failure turned into a total loss. Even Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, came from a housing project in Brooklyn. Early investors walked away. People doubted him, but he pressed on, and now Starbucks is a global empire. Imagine how it must feel to be one of those silent skeptics who bet on your failure and lost everything. Luke 6:22-23 reminds us, "Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven." Chosen one, some were never your supporters. They were silent observers of what they thought would be your slow demise. But heaven was watching too, and God had other plans. Look at Bozoma St. John, one of the most prominent businesswomen in tech and marketing. At every level, she was told she didn't fit, yet she shattered expectations and rose through companies like Apple, Uber, and Netflix. Her existence silences the doubters, and so does yours. Hebrews 10:35-36 says, "So do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded." You didn't just survive, you thrived. And now they're watching in silence, wishing the ending had gone differently. But this was never your ending. It's only the beginning, and they'll have to live with the truth that they bet against someone who was chosen. And in doing so, they lost everything. Number 6, you didn't just succeed, you made them look like frauds. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why some people seemed confident giving you advice, but their lives didn't reflect any of the wisdom they shared? Why did they speak so loudly about the path to success, yet remain stuck in the same place year after year? The truth is, they weren't guiding you, they were performing for you. They wore the mask of authority, hoping you'd never question the lack of fruit in their own lives. But you did more than question it. You exposed it, not through confrontation, but through action. Matthew 7:16 declares, "By their fruit you will recognize them." It's easy to sound wise, it's harder to produce results. They counted on you being the eternal student, the listener who never surpasses the speaker. But, chosen one, you broke that cycle. You took their theories and applied them with divine discipline. And the outcome? Your life became the proof they never had. Think about that. They weren't expecting you to succeed. They were expecting you to stay small under the illusion of their superiority. When you rose, they were exposed. Because now the question is unavoidable. If you could do it with less resources, less status, and more adversity, what excuse do they have left? Just like Melanie Perkins, the co-founder of Canva, who was told repeatedly that her idea was too ambitious. For years, investors turned her away, yet she continued building. Today, Canva is a billion-dollar company. And many of the critics who once mocked her now use her platform. She didn't argue with their doubts. She invalidated them with results, just like you. Proverbs 14:23 says, "All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty." That's the distinction between you and them. While they crafted narratives, you built reality. While they postured, you prepared. While they performed, you produced. And now their words fall flat under the weight of your accomplishments. They'll say it was luck, They'll say you skipped steps, but in truth, what they fear is your consistency. They can't stand that you succeeded without needing their constant validation. You showed the world that knowledge without execution is nothing. That theory without action is dust. And that's why they try to discredit you. It's the only defense they have left. Remember Marques Brownlee, MKBHD. Starting with tech reviews on YouTube as a teenager, he was overlooked by tech veterans who dismissed his opinions. But through excellence, clarity, and unmatched consistency, he became the go-to voice in the tech world, respected even by the companies that once ignored him. Like you, he didn't wait for approval. He earned respect through results. But your rise doesn't just reflect your strength, it reflects their hesitation. You didn't steal their spotlight, you simply lit your own path. Luke 12:3 reminds us, "What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered will be proclaimed from the roofs." And now their private arrogance has been made public, not by your words, but by your works. Even Sophia Amoruso, the founder of Nasty Gal and Girl Boss, built her empire from scratch with no formal business training. Her rise made others uncomfortable because it highlighted what could have been possible for them if they'd just tried. Her journey, like yours, was less about perfection and more about perseverance. 1 Corinthians 4:20 tells us, "For the kingdom of God is not a matter of talk, but of power." You operate in that power now, and for those who only talked, your presence feels like judgment, even when you say nothing at all. So they nitpick, they exaggerate your flaws. But why does your authenticity threaten them so deeply? Because you didn't just win, you revealed their inaction. You didn't just succeed, you made them look like frauds. And now no amount of talking can hide that truth. Number 7. They didn't expect you to keep going after the first win. Chosen one, how many times have people clapped for your first win, only to retreat when you kept winning? At first they smiled, celebrated, even praised your journey. But what they didn't know was that your first victory wasn't the mountain top. It was the warm-up. You weren't chasing a moment. You were stepping into a movement. And that shift, it terrified them. Most people get a taste of success and stop. One milestone becomes their final destination. But you weren't built for one peak. You were built for progression. So instead of settling, you kept climbing. And now, the ones who cheered at first are starting to fade. Why? Because your consistency has outlasted their attention span. Your fire is revealing their fatigue. Philippians 3:14 says, "I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." You were never chasing a trophy. You were chasing purpose. That's why you keep going when others stop. That's why every time they think you've peaked, you redefine the summit. Look at Huda Katan, who began her beauty career with a small blog and YouTube channel. Her first product launch was a hit, but she didn't stop there. Today, Huda Beauty is a global brand worth billions. People thought her initial success would be the end of her story. Instead, it was the beginning. Just like you, her momentum left critics breathless. At first, they were inspired by your discipline, but inspiration turned to intimidation when you didn't slow down. They're not tired of you. They're tired of what your momentum says about their mediocrity. Every new level you reach reminds them of how long they've been standing still. Every win you secure shines a light on the comfort zone they refuse to leave. Hebrews 12:1 reminds us, "Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." You understand that the real journey isn't about the first lap, it's about endurance. And that's why they're struggling to keep up. They trained for a sprint. You're running a marathon. Think of Brandon Sanderson, the prolific fantasy author. While others take years to publish one novel, he consistently releases multiple high-quality books within months. Critics assumed he'd burn out, but he built a rhythm they couldn't match. You did the same. You weren't aiming for applause. You were training for legacy. So now they pretend not to notice. They change the subject when your name comes up. They act like it doesn't impress them. But deep down, they're wondering, how is this person still going? The answer is simple. You're anointed, not average. Chosen, not casual. Even Tan France, fashion designer and TV personality, started with a single brand, but went on to become an international icon through entrepreneurship, advocacy, and relentless growth. His success kept expanding because he didn't stop at the first yes, neither did you. Isaiah 40:31 promises, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary." That's your secret. Your strength isn't natural, it's supernatural. Your journey isn't fueled by ego, it's fueled by calling. So the next time they roll their eyes, minimize your wins, or act unimpressed, remember, it's not about their reaction, it's about your responsibility. You weren't built to peak early, you were built to rise continually. And no matter how many times they think you're done, the next chapter is already being written. 2 Peter 1:10 urges, "Make every effort to confirm your calling and election, for if you do these things, you will never stumble." Chosen one, keep building, keep climbing, keep showing up. Because the truth is, they never expected a storm they couldn't outrun. And now, they can't even see your dust trail. Number 8. They wanted to control your growth, but you grew wild. Chosen one, have you ever felt like someone was cheering you on, but only as long as they could determine how high you were allowed to climb? Have you noticed how their support turned into silence the moment your growth went beyond their boundaries? Why were they comfortable when you were blooming, but only within the fence they built? In the beginning, they smiled at your progress because it made them feel powerful, even noble. They positioned themselves as mentors, as gatekeepers, as architects of your rise. But the moment your growth exceeded their control, their praise turned into passive resistance. Why did their compliments suddenly come with conditions? Why did their encouragement begin to sound more like warnings? Job 8:7 says, "Though your beginning was small, yet your latter end would increase abundantly, and your increase couldn't be regulated. It couldn't be scheduled or scripted. It was wild, planted by God, watered by trials, and released in season. You didn't grow through them, you grew beyond them, and they never planned for that. Did they ever really want you to succeed, or did they only want to manage your shine? They encouraged your steps, as long as they could take credit for them, but the moment your momentum outpaced their control, you became a threat to their narrative." Rachel Hollis didn't grow her empire through mainstream publishing deals or Hollywood connections. She blogged, posted, and stayed relentless. People tried to box her in, but she expanded beyond what anyone predicted. Doesn't that sound familiar? Isaiah 55:9 reminds us, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways." And maybe that's what really shook them. Your destiny stopped responding to their expectations. They couldn't guide you anymore, and they certainly couldn't claim ownership over your success. Why did they suddenly pull back when you reached new levels? Why did their energy change when you didn't need their applause? Was it really you who changed, or was it their ability to control the room that slipped away? Look at The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He was expected to fit a mold. An athlete, maybe an action hero, but never an empire builder. Now he's in boardrooms, on Forbes covers, building global brands. His growth wasn't polite, it was unstoppable. And so is yours. They told you to stay grounded, but what they really meant was stay manageable. They smiled while you were dependent, but now that you've become a force, they're uncomfortable. And yet, Psalm 92:12 declares, "The righteous will flourish like a palm tree." Palm trees don't ask to grow tall, they just do. So did you. Do you remember the moment when they stopped offering opportunities and started offering limits? That was the moment your wild growth outgrew their structure. And now, you've become something they can't claim, can't cage, and can't cancel. Just like Whitney Wolfe Herd, who walked away from one company, launched another, and became a billionaire by rewriting the rules. She didn't stay where she was expected to be, neither did you. Galatians 5:1 reminds us, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free." And your freedom, your wild, beautiful, untamed growth, is the most undeniable evidence that you were never built for smallness. You weren't just growing, you were breaking out. Number 9, you exposed how little they actually did with their own lives. Chosen one, have you ever watched someone flinch? Not because you hurt them, but because your success reminded them of everything they never pursued. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the temperature shift? Not because of what you said, but because of what your presence revealed. They had every advantage. They had time. They had resources. They had access. So what stopped them? It wasn't the system. It wasn't the struggle. It was fear disguised as wisdom. Comfort disguised as logic. You didn't just make it, you became a mirror. And what they saw in that reflection was painful. Luke 12:48 says, "To whom much is given, much will be required." They were given much, but did little. You were given little, but did much. Why does that imbalance bother them so deeply? Why do they mock your ambition now, when they once praised your effort? Could it be that your rise exposed the lie they've been living? That success was unreachable, that the odds were unbeatable, that they never had a chance. Vi Lyles, the first black woman mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, came from a space of underestimation with less support and more scrutiny. Yet she climbed, broke through, and stayed standing. Her story forces others to ask, "What's really been holding me back?" They say you're lucky. But is it luck, or is it that you worked while they watched? You moved while they made excuses. You leapt while they lingered. Ecclesiastes 11:4 says, "Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap." And they spent years watching the weather, waiting for perfect conditions. You planted anyway. Sarah Blakely had no business degree, no fancy backers, just an idea, $5,000, and insane tenacity. Her billion-dollar Spanx empire wasn't built from luck. It was built from grit. Sound familiar? How do they sleep at night knowing you started with less and finished with more? How do they explain the fact that you had none of their tools, but created something that overshadows their lifetime of playing it safe? Romans 2:1 reminds us, "You have no excuse." And that's the real issue. They've run out of excuses. You made it without their safety net. Now they can't pretend the system failed them. They must face the truth. They failed themselves. They say you're too much, but isn't that easier than admitting they were never enough? They roll their eyes at your results because their own reflection brings discomfort. Just like Carmen Herrera, who was ignored for decades until the world had no choice but to recognize her brilliance. Your shine now demands acknowledgement, even from those who'd rather look away. 1 Corinthians 15:58 says, "Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord. Your labor in the Lord is not in vain." Your labor is not in vain. It's sacred, and every win reminds the world what happens when someone refuses to be defined by limits. So the next time they dismiss your victory, ask yourself, are they really questioning your success, or are they mourning their own surrender? You weren't just a fighter. You became the proof that excuses can't survive where purpose is alive. And now, every breath you take in success is a reminder that they could have too. but didn't. Number 10. They thought your pain would break you. Instead, it forged you. Chosen one. Do they even realize what they were really watching when they saw you in pain? They thought your suffering was your end. Your silence was surrender. Your failure was final. But did they ever consider that God wasn't punishing you? He was preparing you. While they were busy writing your obituary, heaven was rewriting your origin story. Romans 5:3-4 tells us, "We also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope." You didn't collapse, you transformed. Every heartbreak hardened your resolve. Every closed door refined your direction. Every loss taught you lessons they've still never learned. Can you remember the moment you realized your pain wasn't a curse, but a curriculum? That you weren't being broken, you were being built. They mistook your struggle for weakness, but what if struggle was the exact ingredient God used to make you unshakable? Bethany Hamilton, the professional surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack, was told she'd never compete again. But not only did she return to surfing, she dominated. Her pain didn't make her bitter, it made her bolder. Like you, her strength wasn't born in comfort, it was forged in fire. Isaiah 48:10 says, "I have refined you, though not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." The fire you went through didn't burn you. It baptized you. It gave you a kind of clarity others can't understand. That's why you see through fake support. That's why you walk with quiet authority. You've been in the dark and built yourself without applause. They thought you would tap out when life got hard. Instead, you adapted. They were waiting for your breakdown, but you had a breakthrough. And now, the version of you that's standing here today, they don't recognize it. Because this version wasn't built in spotlight, it was built in silence. Have you noticed how they speak to you now? Less support, more suspicion, less celebration, more skepticism. Why? Because they can't comprehend how someone who went through so much didn't end up angry, defeated, or emotionally paralyzed. How did you walk through the fire and come out shining? Take Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks. Raised in public housing, facing constant rejection, he pitched his vision to over 200 investors before one finally said yes. He wasn't built in boardrooms, he was forged in no's. And like you, he used pain as fuel. Psalm 34 verse 19 reminds us, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all." You weren't spared from affliction, you were sustained through it. And in that process, your soul was toughened, your discernment sharpened, your mission solidified. Even Taraji P. Henson, who moved to Los Angeles as a single mum with just $700 to her name, was underestimated at every turn. But instead of folding under pressure, she kept going, and now stands as a force in the entertainment world. What they thought would crush her became her crown, just like you. And now they're uneasy, not because you survived, but because you thrived. You didn't just endure the storm, you built in it. And now that you've emerged, chosen one, they don't know how to approach you. You became the very thing they feared, a reminder that pain doesn't always end in pity. Sometimes it ends in power. 2 Corinthians 12:10 says, "For when I am weak, then I am strong." Your weakness wasn't your downfall, it was your doorway. And now, the very struggles meant to bury you have become the badge you wear, as proof that God wasn't done with you. He was just getting started. Number 11. They are watching you. Do what they secretly dreamed of. Chosen one, have you ever felt the strange sting of resentment from someone who used to dream like you did? Someone who once had vision, ambition, and passion, But somewhere along the way, they laid it all down. Now, they watch you, fulfilling the very future they once prayed for, and they don't know how to handle it. What happens when your dream becomes someone else's regret? Why do people who once had hope become your harshest critics? Could it be that your success is waking up parts of themselves they buried long ago? Proverbs 13:12 says, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life." They gave up on the tree. You watered yours. Now your life is bearing fruit, while theirs is haunted by the seeds they never planted. And that contrast is unbearable. Take Viola Davis, who came from nothing, poverty, trauma, rejection, and built an award-winning career. Many actresses started with more but settled for less. Her resilience highlighted their resignation. That's the story of your life. Your pursuit exposes their pause. They told themselves they couldn't, that it wasn't meant for them, that dreaming was dangerous, so they settled. But what happens when someone like you, who had the same doubts and fears, decides not to quit? What happens when you chase the dream they walked away from? Richard Montañez, the janitor at Frito-Lay, dared to pitch an idea for Flamin' Hot Cheetos. No college degree, no executive title, just boldness. Today, he's a millionaire and best-selling author. He didn't let fear win, and neither did you. That's what burns them most. Matthew 25:29 says, "For whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. You had little, but you stewarded it. They had more, but buried it." Now the difference is visible, and it's humbling. They say your success isn't impressive, but are they really unimpressed, or just uncomfortable with what your story forces them to confront? You were handed the same life deck, maybe worse, and you played it without flinching. How does one explain that? Except to admit they gave up too soon. Even Debbie Sterling, the founder of Goldie Blocks, was discouraged from engineering because she was a woman. But she took the very thing others mocked, her vision, and built a multi-million-dollar brand from it. Your dream, like hers, disrupted others' excuses. James 4:17 says, "If anyone knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin." They knew they had more to give, but didn't, and now they see you doing what they only talked about. That's not your sin, that's their silence. So when they criticize you, roll their eyes at your ambition, or pretend your victories don't matter, remember, it's not hate, it's heartbreak, but it's not your burden to carry. You weren't sent to soothe their shame. You were sent to fulfill your purpose. Galatians 6:9 encourages, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." And you didn't. You stayed the course. And now, you're harvesting dreams while they're haunted by abandoned visions. Their battle is not yours. Their regret is not your responsibility. You are not the villain in their story. You're just the character who kept going. And now they have to live with the ending they wrote for themselves. Number 12. You are the blueprint, but they can't follow it. Chosen one, do you ever wonder why some people were so eager to learn from you, only to end up frustrated and distant when they tried to walk your path? In the beginning, they watched you with admiration. They thought, if they can do it, maybe I can too. So they studied your moves, mimicked your choices, copied the way you spoke, dressed, and built. But no matter how closely they followed your steps, something was missing. Have you noticed how they began asking what you did, but never asked who you had to become in the process? Because success isn't just a list of tactics, it's transformation. And they didn't realize that your real blueprint wasn't found in a strategy. It was forged in the silent battles no one saw. 1 Samuel 16:7 reminds us, "People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." They saw your outcome, but not your internal war. They tried to copy your success without carrying your cross. Brandon Stanton, creator of Humans of New York, started with a simple camera and no media background. His blueprint: consistency, empathy, and boldness. Thousands have tried to replicate his storytelling style, but few connect the way he does. Because it isn't just about the format, it's about the person behind the lens, just like you. They thought success was a formula: do this, get that. But you weren't solving an equation. You were surviving spiritual warfare, emotional droughts, and mental fatigue. They didn't see you pacing at midnight, praying when nothing made sense, pushing forward when the vision felt distant. What they call luck was actually your unrelenting obedience. Philippians 4:12-13 says, "I know what it is to be in need. I can do all this through him who gives me strength." They didn't see the need, they only saw the result. And now they wonder why your blueprint isn't working for them. Because what you built wasn't from convenience, but consecration. Marques Brownlee, MKBHD, didn't explode overnight. He built slowly, methodically, through years of disciplined content creation. Many copied his camera angles, but not his consistency. They thought it was style. It was actually sacrifice. So when their attempts didn't work, they got bitter. They said you had secret advantages. They whispered they had it easier, as a way to soften the sting of the truth. You simply had more heart. They wanted the platform without the pain, the reward without the resilience. But that's not how favor works. Proverbs 24:10 says, "If you falter in a time of trouble, how small is your strength?" And while they faltered at the first sign of challenge, you persevered. You weren't building just a brand, you were building character. You weren't just taking steps, you were climbing through storms. Melanie Perkins, CEO of Canva, was laughed out of rooms for years. Today she runs one of the most widely used design platforms in the world. Why? Because she kept pushing while others gave up. Her blueprint wasn't just in her pitch decks, it was in her persistence. So now they talk about you with subtle bitterness. Why? Because they realize the blueprint wasn't broken. They just weren't built for the process. James 1:4 urges, "Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." But they gave up too soon. You didn't. And the hardest truth they have to swallow: they still don't have what it takes, because they haven't let God mold them like you did. You didn't just succeed, you became the proof that favor follows faith, not formulas. Number 13. They prayed for your survival, not your domination. Chosen one, can we talk about something most people won't admit out loud? There are people in your life who were completely okay with you surviving, but not thriving. They wanted to see you stable, not soaring. Getting by, not breaking boundaries. They were fine clapping for you, as long as you stayed close enough to be relatable. Have you ever wondered why certain people celebrated your small wins, but started acting distant the moment you started walking in your divine authority? Why do they call it humble beginnings when you're behind, but label you too much when you're ahead? Deuteronomy 28:13 promises, "The Lord will make you the head, not the tail." But not everyone is prepared to see you at the front. Your elevation exposed the unspoken truth. They never rooted for your excellence, they rooted for your containment. Take Lewis Hamilton, the world-renowned Formula One driver. Early on, people applauded his potential, but when he shattered records and dominated the sport, suddenly criticism replaced support. His excellence disrupted their expectations. Yours does too. They prayed you'd be okay, but they never imagined you'd become unstoppable. And now, every step you take forward forces them to examine the steps they never took. Galatians 1:10 asks, "Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God?" You were never sent to appease their insecurities. You were sent to fulfill a kingdom assignment. Do you remember when they said, "I'm proud of you," but now they say, "Don't forget where you came from"? Do you feel the shift? That's not humility talking, that's fear. Because when you rise too far, they lose their ability to relate. And your growth makes them question why they stayed small. Beyoncé, once just a great singer, became an icon. As her vision expanded, so did the resistance. Why? Because she wasn't just surviving in the music industry, she was mastering it. And people fear mastery more than struggle. That's why they're uncomfortable watching you dominate. Isaiah 60:22 says, "The least of you will become 1,000, the smallest a mighty nation." But when the one they labeled least starts to lead, everything in their world gets exposed, not by arrogance, just by contrast. Fred Swaniker, founder of African Leadership Academy, dared to dream bigger than charity. He built institutions of transformation, but as he scaled, so did the tension from those who were okay with good enough. He didn't stay in the lane they set, and neither did you. Now they say, "You changed." But have you really changed? Or did you simply become everything they were afraid to reach for? Psalm 18:29 boldly declares, "With your help I can advance against a troop. With my God I can scale a wall." And chosen one, you scaled it, not just to make it, but to take territory. You're not surviving anymore. You're dominating. And domination is intimidating to those who never wanted you to do more than scrape by. So now they're left with a choice: level up, or stay in the shadows and throw quiet shade. But either way, that's not your concern. You weren't put here to be palatable. You were called to be powerful. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their jealousy is not your weight to carry. Their regret is not your assignment. Isaiah 41:10 promises, "Do not fear. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." You didn't just survive. You were appointed to dominate. And whether they accept it or not, that anointing cannot be denied. Number 14, you've become their silent nightmare. Chosen one, have you ever walked into a room and felt the tension rise? Not because of what you said, but simply because of who you've become. Have you noticed how some people shift uncomfortably in your presence? How they lower their voices when your name comes up? Or how they quickly change the subject when your success is mentioned? Why does your growth unsettle them so deeply, especially when you never did a thing to harm them? The answer is simple. You've become their silent nightmare. Proverbs 3:35 says, "The wise inherit honor, but fools get only shame." Your honor is unsettling to those still clinging to excuses. Your rise is a loud confrontation to their quiet regrets. They don't talk about you anymore, not openly, because to say your name out loud is to admit that someone they once overlooked, doubted, or dismissed has become everything they pretended wasn't possible. They hoped your success would be short-lived, that your first win would be your last. They called it a fluke, convinced themselves you'd burn out, or that life would humble you eventually. But what happened when the opposite occurred? What happened when you didn't just keep going, but kept winning? Jessica Watson, the teenage sailor from Australia, was told she couldn't possibly sail solo around the world at 16, but she did. And when she returned, they could no longer deny her courage. Like you, her quiet dominance destroyed loud doubt. They thought you'd fade into the background, that you'd be a one-hit wonder, but instead, your consistency shattered their narrative. You didn't slow down, you scaled higher, and now you haunt them, not as a villain, but as a reflection of what they could have been, if only they had believed in themselves as much as you believed in your calling. Ecclesiastes 9:11 says, "The race is not to the swift, nor favor to the learned, but time and chance happened to them all. You didn't win because you had more. You won because you endured. You took your time and turned it into purpose. You took your chance and turned it into impact. They scroll past your victories trying not to care, but every post, every mention, every new level you reach triggers that inner voice that whispers, "That could have been me." That's not your fault, chosen one. That's their unfinished business screaming through their silence. You never needed to clap back. You didn't need revenge. Your presence is the response. Your excellence is the evidence. And that's why they're so uncomfortable, because your results speak louder than their reasoning. Burna Boy, once ignored by international media, kept building his music, vision, and following. Now he's a global icon, and many who once doubted him now study him. His legacy isn't loud, it's undeniable, just like yours. 2 Timothy 4:7 says, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." You didn't get here through noise. You got here through grit, through silent nights of discipline, through invisible warfare, through every moment you chose not to quit, even when quitting would have made more sense. Have you ever noticed how they try to act unfazed, throwing out phrases like, "good for them," or "they got lucky"? Why the sarcasm now? Why the subtle digs? Is it possible that your name, your existence, has become too heavy for their comfort zone to carry? Elizabeth Holmes built her life around a public image, one that eventually crumbled under pressure. But you built yours in private. And that's why it's unshakable, because what they thought was temporary turned out to be truth, and the truth is now confronting their denial. Psalm 75, 6-7 says, "No one from the east or the west or from the desert can exalt themselves. It is God who judges. He brings one down. He exalts another." And God exalted you, not because you were perfect, but because you were positioned. Not because you were popular, but because you were prepared. They hoped for your survival, not your dominance. And now, every time you rise, it shakes the foundation they built on comparison, comfort, and compromise. You didn't just pass them, you made them pause. And the silence? That's not peace, that's pain. Kalpana Chawla, the first woman of Indian origin to go to space, faced tremendous opposition and limited support. But she rose above it all, and in her journey she became a beacon. Her excellence forced people to rethink what was possible, just like yours. Isaiah 62:3 declares, "You will be a crown of splendor in the Lord's hand, a royal diadem in the hand of your God." That's why you shine, even when they try to ignore it. That's why you lead, even when they pretend you don't exist. Because your crown was never given by man, it was ordained by heaven. So let them watch from the shadows. Let them whisper. Let them try to dismiss what they can no longer deny. Your journey isn't about them. It never was. You didn't fight through storms, rejection, and pain just to win their approval. You were never meant to just survive. You were built to reign. You were built to shift the atmosphere. You were built to walk in rooms and change what's possible. And now that you're doing it, they can't unsee it. Their silence is their confession. Their discomfort is their exposure. And your success is the sermon they can't ignore. Let them toss glances and shade. It changes nothing. Let them avoid your name. It echoes louder in their minds. Because while they sit in the shadows of what could have been, you're out here making history. Beloved chosen one, if this message stirred something inside you, if it opened your eyes, confirmed your strength, or simply reminded you that you're not alone on this journey, thank you for being here. Thank you for walking this path with courage, honesty, and faith. Your presence in this space is not taken for granted. If you feel led to support this mission, you can now donate directly through the Super Thanks feature below. Your gift helps us continue creating content that uplifts, empowers, and awakens those who are called. And whether you give or not, please hear this. I am deeply grateful for you either way. Just the fact that you're here, watching, listening, and growing means everything. I bless you, chosen one. May peace surround your mind, may strength fill your spirit, and may every door that God ordained for you begin to swing wide open. May you continue to walk in boldness, clarity, and divine favor. Unshaken, unbothered, and unstoppable. If this hit deep, if this made you see things differently, don't just keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready for more raw, unfiltered truth that pushes you to level up, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because we're just getting started. Your growth is inevitable. Let's keep winning. With love, your fellow chosen one.